Coming up today, high-level talks between the two Koreas aimed at diffusing tensions on the Korean peninsula stretch into a third straight day. Despite those talks, North Korea ups its combat readiness by deploying amphibious landing crafts to the front line. South Korea and the United States remain on high alert for a possible provocation. Plus, hundreds of South Koreans with homes near the inter-Korean border spend another night in emergency shelters after they were evacuated as a precautionary measure. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Monday, the 24th of August. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. More than 20 hours have passed since the two Koreas started their second round of high-level talks aimed at cooling tensions on the peninsula. No word as of yet on the outcome of the discussions. At a meeting with her senior secretaries this morning, President Park Geun-hye said Seoul will continue its anti-North Korea broadcasts unless Pyongyang apologizes for its recent provocations and makes promises on preventive measures. For details, let's connect to our presidential office correspondent, Chae Yu-sun. So, Yu-sun, no change in the South Korean government's position.
Mark, President Park clearly stated that the most important issue on the two Koreas' agenda is getting the North's apology for its recent landmine blast in the demilitarized zone. Unless that is achieved, she said Seoul will continue its anti-North Korea propaganda broadcast, which resumed after the DMZ attack. Pyongyang is reportedly denying responsibility for the attack and is demanding that Seoul stop the broadcast and called it an insult to the North's leader Kim Jong-un. The August 4th incident left two South Korean soldiers seriously injured, escalating tensions that led to the two Koreas exchanging of artillery fire last week. The South Korean president added that her government will not back down to Pyongyang's increasing threats because the issue concerns South Korean people's security and safety. She said Seoul will strongly respond to any type of provocation from Pyongyang, but is open to joining hands with its northern neighbor for peace and prosperity. Mark?
And Yu-sun, do we know if there's been any progress at all in these marathon talks?
While officials here in the South remain tight-lipped, as any unconfirmed leaks could lead to a negative impact on the ongoing negotiations. The presidential office is here in Seoul is also known to be closely watching the situation. Aside from the DMZ issue, the two sides are likely to have talked about non-military issues as well, including the resumption of reunions of families separated by the Korean War. It's likely North Korea has urged the South to stop its annual military exercises with the U.S., which it considers a part of a war game, and sought ways to resume inter-Korean tourism and other economic projects that were suspended after the North's series of provocations. Now, it's difficult to predict whether the marathon talks will bring about a substantial outcome, but I should point out that the North has yet to apologize for its torpedoing of the South Korean warship Cheonan and the shelling of the South Yeonpyeong-do Island in 2010, which combined claims the lives of 50 South Koreans. But the fact that they are continuing talks for the third straight day shows that both sides' commitment to resolving the situation, and whether they will strike a deal today or call another adjournment, we'll have to wait and see. This was Chae Yu-sun reporting on the two Koreas' second round of talks at Panmunjom.
Now, tensions remain high at the inter-Korean border. In its latest movements, North Korea has deployed its main infiltration units and military hardware to the front lines. Let's connect to our correspondent Kim Hyun-bin, standing by the Ministry of National Defense in Seoul. Hyun-bin.
Hi, Mark. Yeah, we've been seeing some unusual and fairly concerning military movement north of the border over the past 24 hours, and officials here say that North Korea has deployed air cushion vehicles, dozens of submarines, and special forces units to the front lines. Now, military sources in the south say around 10 amphibious landing crafts left their home base and are now just 50 to 60 kilometers north of the northern limit line. Now, those crafts are believed to be transporting special forces as well. On top of that, 50 submarines, about 70% of North Korea's entire fleet, are no longer in port. Their location is unknown as they haven't been detected on any of South Korea's radar systems. The sheer number of submarines taken to the water at one time is unprecedented since the Korean War. Now, officials say the military movements are likely intended to up pressure on Seoul to meet some of its demands at the high-level talks, especially shutting off the propaganda speakers at the border.
Well, it's quite alarming that all those submarines have been deployed. We hope, of course, that North Korea doesn't launch any kind of provocation. But Hyunbin, what plans have the South Korean military put in place to deal with this submarine deployment?
Well, South Korea and the U.S. are taking this matter very seriously, as you can imagine, and the allies have deployed anti-submarine helicopters, destroyers, and smaller warships known as convoys near the maritime border. Now, in fact, we heard a couple hours ago that South Korea was deploying all of its destroyers and convoys. Now, on top of the marine power, heavy artillery and multiple rocket launchers are positioned to strike back in case North Korea tries to launch an attack of some sort. Now, as we are still on high alert, South Korean troops are in full combat gear and are carrying live ammunition. And the Defense Ministry also says Seoul and Washington are reviewing plans to deploy B-52 bombers and nuclear submarines to the Korean peninsula to better prepare for threats from the north. The two allies remain on the second highest level of their 5-level WatchCon threat alert system. WatchCon Level 2 is issued if signs of a critical threat are detected. Now, the Defense Ministry says South Korea and the United States are utilizing their full arsenal of reconnaissance satellites, planes, and other military assets at this time. Now, I'll keep you updated on the latest developments throughout the day. But for now, this has been Kim Hyun-bin reporting live at the Ministry of National Defense in Seoul.
Now, given the tense state of affairs at the border and North Korea's continued threats against the south, residents living near the border have been evacuated to shelters as a precautionary measure. Our Connie Kim is standing by at an emergency shelter in Yeongchun. Connie, it must be a stressful time for the local residents. How have they been coping?
Well, Mark, around 20 residents at this shelter have spent another night here, as most of them were moved here on Thursday. Now, most of them are hoping that the two Koreas reach a compromise so they can swiftly return to their daily lives. I haven't been able to talk to the people yet, as police are asking reporters to give the residents some peace at this stressful moment. But what I did hear is that residents are glued to the TV watching news about the talks and hoping for a positive outcome. Televisions, internet access, and air conditioning are set up inside the shelter, and they're also provided with food and water for the duration of their stay. Most residents in this area are farmers or work on farms, and they're keen to get back to their daily lives as soon as possible. Now, Mark, this area, Yeonchun, is seen as extra sensitive as this is where North Korea last week fired several artillery shells targeting South Korea's propaganda loudspeakers. However, the area remains relatively calm for now, as there have been no additional provocations. Paju, Gyeonggi Province, and Hwacheon in Gyeonggi-do Province have also ordered residents to evacuate to shelters. Reporting live from Yeonchun, this has been Connie Kim.
And the U.S. State Department has reiterated Washington's firm commitment to South Korea's security amid escalating tensions in the region. State Department spokeswoman Gabriella Price said the U.S. is carefully monitoring the situation on the Korean peninsula. She said the United States will continue to coordinate closely with Seoul and remain steadfast in its commitment to defend its allies. U.S. President Barack Obama was said to have been briefed on the latest developments over the weekend. Now, in other news, a confirmation hearing for President Park Geun-hye's nominee for Health Minister is underway at the National Assembly. Earlier this month, the President nominated Jong Jin-yop, an orthopedic surgeon and public health expert at Seoul National University in Bundang, to be her new health chief. Should Jong pass his confirmation hearing today, it would mark the first time in 17 years for a medical doctor to be appointed health minister. Lawmakers have been questioning Jong on his capability to lead the ministry. The ministry was harshly criticised for its poor initial response to the recent outbreak of Middle East respiratory syndrome, or as is otherwise known, MERS. It's a widely known scientific fact that women generally live longer than men, but new figures from the OECD show the gender gap in life expectancy in South Korea is far higher than most developed nations. A variety of factors are in play, but experts say the high smoking rate is not doing Korean men any favors. Son Jung-in reports.
New data from the OECD show that as of 2013, South Korea's life expectancy at birth stood at 81.8 years, more than 8 years above the OECD average. But if we look at the figures separately, it was a different story for South Korean men. By gender, South Korean men were expected to live until 78.5 years of age, 6.6 years less than women's 85.1 years. Women's life expectancy was the 5th highest among the 34 OECD nations. South Korean men were around the middle in 16th. South Korea's gender gap in life expectancy was the 5th highest, tied with France. The gap was relatively narrow in the Netherlands, New Zealand, the UK, and Iceland, but much larger in Estonia, Poland, Slovakia, and Hungary. Experts say the discrepancy can largely be attributed to higher smoking and alcohol consumption rates among men compared to women. South Korea had the 3rd highest male smoking rate at 36%, but ranked the lowest in women at just over 4%. An official at the Korea Institute for Health and Social Affairs pointed out that along with smoking and drinking, other factors like cancer and the high suicide rate probably contributed to lowering life expectancy. He added that South Korean men are more exposed to risks as they tend to have more active social lives than women. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Now, commodities markets around the world have plunged to levels not seen since the 2008-2009 global financial crisis on fears that a more severe slowdown in China could pull down other economies in the region and further denting raw material and energy consumption. Now, the price of oil closed on Friday at just over $40 a barrel. That's a 34% slide from June, when it registered just over $61. The price of some metals, such as copper and nickel, has also dropped around 20% in the space of just 2 months. Now, an index called the CBR index, which calculates the future prices of 19 different commodities, including oil, metals and wheat, closed last Friday at a 12-year low. In addition to the slowing Chinese economy, the looming US interest rate hike expected next month has kept the greenback strong and further caused concerns for the Korean economy, which heavily depends on foreign trade. Criticism is rising within Japan following Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's war-end anniversary statement early this month, which failed to offer a clear apology for the country's colonial rule and past aggression before and during World War II. Osaka City Mayor Toru Hashimoto said on Sunday that Japan must clearly express feelings of remorse and apology to Korea and China, who were victims of Japan's invasions. The Japanese daily Sankei Shimbun reports that Hashimoto said Japanese politicians should continue to offer apologies, adding that it was not acceptable for the Abe administration to try and justify Japan's past wartime atrocities. Now, there's been an explosion at a US military base in Japan. Reports say the blast occurred a little after midnight local time, so around 12 hours ago, at the US military facility in Sagamihara, a prefecture on the outskirts of Tokyo. Videos like the one you're seeing now show the site of the explosion and a fireball coming out of that building and smoke rising from it. The Pentagon says there have been no reports of injuries. Firefighters were dispatched to put the fire out and to prevent its spread to nearby buildings. It has been extinguished now. The building that blew up was reportedly used to store hazardous materials. The cause of the explosion is not yet clear, but investigations are underway. Now, touchable 3D graphics floating in midair might sound like a highly futuristic concept, but Japanese researchers have found a way to make it a reality. The technology may even end up rendering 3D glasses obsolete at cinemas. Park Se-young reports.
If you've seen the movie Iron Man, you may recall the hero using hologram projectors to create interactive three-dimensional images of robotic suits in the air. In reality, such images can only be seen through 3D glasses. However, Japanese researchers have now found a way to create holographic displays in mid-air utilizing highly focused pulse layers. Dubbed fairy lights, the holograms are also safe to touch. Existing technology projects plasma displays by ionizing air molecules with lasers to create glowing points of light. However, to prevent human skin, which burns when coming into contact with the air molecules, Japanese researchers are instead using femtosecond lasers which fire every millisecond. The new touchable holograms have been programmed to change shape and form when users touch the pixels. A haptic interface also provides users with the ability to experience the physical sensation of touch. Currently, only low-resolution images of basic shapes like stars and letters have been displayed, but the team is working on creating more complex images with hopes of marketing its technology for use during emergencies. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broome. Just to say, if there are any developments at the inter-Korean talks taking place at the border, we will let you know in our next newscast coming up throughout the day. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Until then, goodbye.